Another potential risk you may see is with what's called fractal scaling. Fractal scaling, so if you know the optical tool called kaleidoscope, you kind of you twist it and you have very nice, very cool looking um, crystals, colored crystals. It actually looks very pretty. Now, essentially what you're looking at right now is a fractal design by multiple teams. Each team has their own TOO. TOO is really not a good thing to have. TOO is not a product owner. It's a team output owner, someone who is responsible for the volume of work that's being produced. And there's a lot of excessive, massive, and mandatory coordination that happens in between teams and in between these different constellations. Typically, it gets done through Scrum of Scrums and Scrum of Scrum of Scrums and Scrum of Scrum of Scrum and Scrum, and you break your tongues how many Scrums through Scrum Masters. It doesn't get executed by actual doers, by teams. There's a lot of dependency on Scrum Master coordination, which means teams do not work close with each other. I'm going to make this just in passing, this statement. If you really want to understand the underlying challenge and problem you will see with team-specific so-called product owners, the better name for it would be TOO, team output owners. You may want to play this video. I can share this with you separately if you reach out. It's by Michael James of Seattle Scrum, which is a pretty informational and pretty, aha moment kind of video. So just to, again, to say, with this kind of organizational design, with multiple teams, private backlogs, you will end up so many different estimations happen ad hoc and independently. Of course, coordination overhead and local optimization by each component team would be also detrimental to the system. Will be certainly not, almost inevitable. If you have so much coordination and so much unnecessary orchestration, you're going to have lots of local optimization in the system. So, of course, cumulative estimation by these kind of teams is not going to be reliable. This one I'm going to say just in passing. Scaling by contractually bound vendor groups. I'm sure you've seen this before. You got a bunch of vendors working for your client company, you're the client. You have engagement leads representing these vendors. So you end up talking not to real doers, you talk to their technical leads and engagement managers, engagement leads, the best of the best of the best people that actually know how to speak English. Sometimes you don't get these vendor people that actually speak English, good English. So you end up with people that probably understand some code, but they cannot communicate with customers. How bad is that, huh? So you end up actually having people, managers speaking and managing and providing estimates on behalf of their own people to your client company. Then imagine now you got these vendors, these vendor people being almost like stapled together into so-called teams. They're really not real teams because a team has a very specific definition. So these are like mostly groups that are joined by either by a contract or by some sort of a reporting. And with that, you can't really rely much on on what they say because they really don't even get to speak. They just do mundane work with lots of dependencies and lots of excessive management. So this is going to be probably very far from real scaling. And cumulative estimation by these kind of teams, of course, is not going to be accurate because it all goes through multiple chains of command and multiple layers of translation. And then, of course, all of the above will require a lot of excessive coordination, orchestration, delegation of responsibilities, dependency management by managers, of course, and those cost money. And therefore, will lead to errors, omissions, finger pointing, blame gaming, and estimation, and it will lead to, of course, the budgeting, and will subsequently lead to financial miscalculation, budget cuts, and force reduction. This is another way to look at the system, right? Because you introduce these problems all the way upstream. Of course, it's going to translate all the way down there. So you may think, why did we end up where we are? Well, because you started off in a very inappropriate way, let's put it that way. So it doesn't mean that we cannot have a budget cut for some other reasons, but here we are clearly running a different problem. And we need to do everything we can to avoid it. Then of course, even if you're an expert in all of these great estimation techniques, and I can tell you, I've done a plenty over years, and I can almost assure you that all of these are some are more advanced, less advanced, but they're really helpful, but under certain conditions. You really need to have proper conditions for these to work. If they are being applied to wrong teams, or that are teams in name only, then it is highly unlikely going to get much benefit of all of these, right? This becomes almost like you put these 4 gadgets, pretty advanced, pretty sophisticated gadgets, you put it on the tricycle. I mean, what good does it do? I mean, there's no gas. There was no altitude. You don't need to measure altitude. You don't need to measure oil pressure, because these, or barometric pressure. None of these parameters exist in a bike, in a tricycle. So all these advanced techniques, and we sometimes see teams digressing into these, and Scrum Masters almost like being intoxicated. Oh my God! And I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're trying their best, but they're applying these advanced estimation techniques to teams that, by definition, cannot produce anything accurate. It's almost like putting a saddle on a cow. You're not going to make it into an Arabian horse. It's going to remain to be a cow, right? So it's not that we shouldn't be trying to estimate and based on those estimates forecast. It's just, in order for us to do this right, we need to have right foundation. We need to have right teams. We have to have properly built teams. For that, of course, we need a conscious approach to the topic of organizational design. If we kind of brush it off and say, well, this is too important, this is too serious for us to challenge, we can't change org design, because these large commercially successful frameworks, what do you think they're money makers for their creators? Like multi-billion dollars, I think. Well, because they don't challenge much, and they're super comfortable for organizations to unpack and install. That, of course, you can put a saddle on a horse, on a cow, and you may pretend this is a racing horse, but it's not. Okay. So are there any alternatives? Well, first of all, in good old Scrum, if we just had a very small company with a very small product that was worked upon by a single team, that was cross-functional, cross-component centric. It's a mouthful. A team that was able to work on all the components. Besides, every member of that team was able to speak multiple languages, multiple technology languages. Every member had some good knowledge about functional domains and business itself. Then, of course, that team together could go on the journey of estimation, by using a planning poker or beanie beads or dog breeds or whatever the arbitrary technique you can think of. And based on that, they could crunch numbers and come in, and if they did things as per those advanced techniques, because this is the whole different conversation, how to take one sprint estimation that's done in sprint 25 and 26 and 27 and apply it to the whole backlog and make this into a more reliable forecasting mechanism. There are ways to do it. We're not discussing it today, but there are ways to do it. But in order for this to happen, you need right people at the table. aka you need to have right teams in place. Okay, here we have 3 to 9 people that are expected to estimate together, even if not everyone can do their work. You may in fact have some people that are experts in back-end Java but understand a little something about front-end, so when they discuss it with front-end developers, at least they speak common lingo, right? So of course, ideally you want to have everyone to be able to do everything, but in reality, this may be like, could be like a nirvana state, but we should be striving towards. But at least if you have all of the skills on the team and everyone understands what is done by their colleagues, by their teammates, at least this way we have a higher chance of estimating accurately. But what if you have multiple teams? What if you have really like maybe 5 or 7 or 8 teams? Large-scale Scrum is Scrum. So this is not just yet another scaling methodology or another scaling framework. In fact, it is almost mislabeled. It's mislabeled because large-scale Scrum is not about scaling. It's about organizational descaling, which means in order for us to scale goodness, we need to remove anything and everything that sits in between and makes it not so good. So for instance, if you got too many managers and too many conduits and translators in between teams, in large-scale Scrum, we kindly ask them to step away so that teams can talk to teams. Individuals can talk within teams directly as opposed to being put through multiple layers of translation. In large-scale Scrum, multiple teams do not do their own Scrum individual separately, like in a silo. In large-scale Scrum, real teams spring together on the same product. So if you wanted to use my analogy, which may not be the best analogy, but that's what really sticks to me. You got a 5, 6 different horses and different jockeys running at their own pace and trying to beat each other. This is really not large-scale Scrum. This is different strategy, different mission, different vision. Everyone does their own thing. However, this would be Scrum-like event because you got multiple horses pulling in the same direction on the same cadence, being guided by the same jockey. So although maybe a jockey is not the best analogy with a product owner, but at least gives you an idea, right? Same mission, vision, same unified goal and purpose. Concurrently, on the same cadence, with lots of coordination integration that happens directly, not through conduits and translators. These teams work out of the same backlog for the same product owner. Not multiple backlogs, not multiple team output owners. Those things are going to be completely unsupportive of what we're trying to say here. This gives these teams ability to refine during refinement sessions or anytime together, plan together, and coordinate directly, not through multiple conduits and translations and translation layers. And of course, they will estimate together as well. This is a big key thing. In large-scale Scrum, teams estimate together. Another way to look at this would be if you had like a boat race. Wouldn't be really a race. That's actually not incorrect to say. It would be 5 tugboats rowing together, pulling in the same direction on the same product, having one product owner with scope and vision and setting strategic direction, and a bunch of users and customers defining, providing clarifications. Again, in large-scale Scrum, it's a much longer conversation. We clearly delineate between prioritization and clarification, who does what. Not to say too much about how teams are being structured. One thing you need to know, each team is almost a clone of another team. They may not be the same in size, but capabilities are the same. So in other words, when these 5 teams, how many people, maybe almost 30 people, maybe 25 people come together to estimate, they speak the same lingo. They speak the same language. They understand each other well, and they can produce a much more accurate estimation. So if you remember that formula that we talked about at the very beginning, going from estimations to budget and forecasting, this is it. If you have crappy numbers to start with, no matter how sophisticated your formulas are going to be, you're going to produce crappy numbers. So your crappy estimates are going to lead to crappy budgets and forecasts. So it really starts all the way upstream. Then you can go in further upstream to say, well, how do we get these accurate estimates? It is by team design. It is by org design.